Hello everyone, welcome back to the War Diary channel. Please subscribe and like my videos. What if I told you Ukraine had one final card, one last audacious stroke that could flip the war's balance and leave Russia stunned? That's exactly what we're diving into today. A counterattack so bold, so unexpected, it shook the world. Let me take you through every angle, how it looked from the outside, what lay within, how it performed, the risks and protections built in. What made it uniquely powerful, the cost in human and material terms, and finally what it all means going forward. From the outside, this counterattack looked cinematic. Long columns of armor, hidden in forest corridors and scrublands, suddenly breathed life at midnight, moving in tight formations, masked by darkness and electronic suppression. Russian radar screens flickered with new blips. Drone swarms zipped overhead to confuse air defenses. Missile volleys rained in diversionary strikes on supply lines and depots. The sheer audacity of pushing deep into territory held for months created shock. Russian command centers scrambled. Supply convoys stalled. Communications were cut. The visual was one of sudden motion after stasis. Units bursting out of trenches, armored vehicles cresting ridgelines, columns pivoting unexpectedly. It looked like lightning peeling back a front line in places thought impregnable. Analysts watching satellite imagery later described entire fronts bending under pressure, with gaps opening rapidly. Amid that, small teams infiltrated Russian rear areas, disrupting logistics, hacking comms, hitting fuel dumps and ammunition stockpiles. From the outside, it was a spectacle of speed, surprise and boldness, and it caught Russia off guard. Inside, behind that outward show, lay meticulous planning, coordination, discipline, and grit. The interior of this operation comprised intelligence, command networks, reserves, cyber warfare, drone coordination, logistics, and morale. Ukrainian commanders had secretly rehearsed multiple axes of advance. They had rehearsed how to exploit weak spots, how to rotate units, how to supply columns deep into contested zones. The control rooms were humming with real-time data, drones feeding visuals, signals intelligence, intercepting Russian chatter, artillery units poised to adjust fire, air defenses watching the skies. Although concise, inside this counterstroke was a web of hyper-connected units, continuous feedback loops, and reserves ready to pour in. That internal machinery is what made the dazzling external moves possible rather than reckless. In terms of performance, this counterattack outpaced many expectations. Speed was the first marker. Ukrainian spearheads penetrated dozens of kilometers in days where conventional wisdom thought only attritional ground gains were possible. Surprise was the second. Russian forces, expecting limited probes, instead confronted full-scale thrusts from multiple directions. Precision was third. Drones and guided munitions hit logistics hubs, command posts, and choke points with stunning accuracy, not just blind shelling. Flexibility was another. When one axis bogged, another was reinforced and pushed. The performance also showed endurance. Supply lines held, reinforcements arrived, units rotated without collapsing the front. In places the assault stalled temporarily, but rather than freezing, the Ukrainian command reconfigured the attack, shifted to secondary axes, and maintained momentum. The outcome in several sectors was a complete rupture of Russian defensive lines, forcing withdrawals or surrenders in pockets. This wasn't just brute force, it was elegant, adaptive warfare with professional execution. On safety/defensive features/risk mitigation, Ukraine's planners built safeguards and contingencies. Before the launch, extensive reconnaissance cleared minefields, identified enemy strongpoints, and mapped artillery coverage. Electronic warfare was used to jam or mislead Russian radars and communications. Russian drone overflights were disrupted. Mobile air defenses protected the spearheads from aerial attacks. Flanking units were held in reserve to seal off counterattacks or plug breaches. Lines of retreat and fallback positions were planned meticulously in case of overextension. Casualty evacuation corridors were prearranged. Logistics trains were dispersed and concealed to reduce vulnerability to counterstrikes. Redundancy was built into command networks to prevent single points of failure. In zones expected to face fierce resistance, Ukrainian forces used infiltration, deception, and reconnaissance to soften defenses before committing heavy assets. All of this reduced the chance of disaster in what could have been a catastrophic gamble. The unique selling points of this counterattack are what made it a game-changer. First, the element of surprise. Many believed Ukraine was too worn, too stretched to pull off a large operation, so Russia relaxed its vigilance. Second, the integration of modern drones. ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, precision fires, cyber operations, and traditional ground maneuver, all working in harmony rather than in silos. Third, agility and adaptability. The command structure was nimble, able to change plans mid-battle. Fourth, the psychological impact. The bold strike sent a message not just to Russia, but to the world and to Ukraine's allies that Kyiv remains capable of initiative, not just defense. Fifth, economy of force. Rather than massing huge indiscriminate armies, Ukraine focused on striking critical nodes: logistics, command, supply, magnifying results with fewer resources. And sixth, resilience. After initial breakthroughs, sustaining the advance, consolidating gains, holding lines against counterattacks. As for price, the cost in materiel and lives was steep. No bold operation of this scale is risk-free. There were losses of armor, tanks, infantry, artillery, and air assets. Some units suffered casualties when they encountered fortified positions or counterattacks. The logistics tail was taxed heavily. Civilian infrastructure in contested zones was damaged, and forcing rapid advances sometimes risked overextension. But in many calculations, the strategic gains outweighed the cost. Russian losses in men, equipment, morale, and territory may have been disproportionately higher. The price also includes diplomatic, political, and reputational stakes. Had the counterattack failed catastrophically, Ukraine would have been blamed, morale could have collapsed, and external support might have weakened. But by pulling it off, Ukraine effectively made a high-risk, high-reward move that many thought impossible. In conclusion, this was not just a military maneuver, it was a statement. Ukraine's final card proved they are far from fatigued. They are capable of initiative, daring, and strategic vision. By combining surprise, integrated technologies, internal resilience, defensive safeguards, and focused execution, they stunned Russia and shifted momentum. The streets of occupied zones, the maps of front lines, the ruin of supply depots, all tell the tale of a turning point. The cost was serious, but the payoff may be historic. What this means going forward is that Russia will have to reassess its posture, rebuild defensive depth, anticipate future Ukrainian thrusts, and perhaps consider negotiations from a weaker position. Meanwhile, Ukraine has shown the world that it has more in reserve than many believed. This counterattack may well be remembered as the moment where inertia finally gave way, where hope turned to forward motion, and where the idea of victory became by no means remote. So that's the full breakdown of Ukraine's final card, the shocking counterattack that stunned Russia. Thanks for watching this deep dive. If you found this helpful, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss future episodes of the War Diary. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll analyze what comes next, who's vulnerable, and where the war might head from here.